Elena signed her name to a fraud she didn't know she was committing. Her mentor made sure of that. He'd been planning it for 4 years since the day he hired her. She just didn't know that yet. It started the way most important things at Whitfield & Cole started, quietly. In Robert's office over coffee, he made a point of remembering how she liked it. Oat milk, 1 sugar, he never wrote it down. He just remembered every time and let her notice that he remembered. "You have an instinct for this," he told her, 6 months into the job, sliding a file across the desk she hadn't asked for. "Most people take years to see the patterns you're already seeing." Elena believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was the firm's best account manager, 20 years in, the one every junior analyst wanted mentoring them, the one whose name got dropped in performance reviews like a blessing. He'd picked her out of a stack of 40 resumes. He told her that once, like it meant something. "I saw something in your application, something the others didn't have." She never asked what. She spent the next year trying to be worthy of an answer she'd never actually been given. Over the next 2 years, Robert gave her more than anyone gave a second-year analyst. Bigger accounts, his personal signature on her reviews, a seat at meetings analysts her level didn't attend. She'd sit slightly behind him, taking notes nobody asked her to take. And he'd occasionally turn and say, "Elena caught that, actually," crediting her in front of partners who wouldn't have known her name otherwise. Each time the same phrase, almost gentle, "You've earned this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." There was a night she'd forget the exact date later, though she'd remember everything else about it when a colleague, Pretty, from 2 desks over, said something offhand in the break room. "Robert, giving you the Caslow account, that usually goes to someone with 5 years in. He said I was ready." Pretty had shrugged, not unkindly. He said that to Marcus too, before Marcus left. Elena hadn't thought much of it at the time. Marcus had left for a better opportunity, the kind of vague phrase that circulated through office goodbyes and meant nothing specific to anyone still there. She filed the comment away in the part of her mind reserved for things that didn't quite fit and didn't look at it again for 2 more years. What she didn't notice, what nobody around her noticed because it happened one signature at a time, was that every account Robert handed her came with paperwork he'd already half completed. Client authorizations pre-filled, approval boxes checked before she'd reviewed a single figure. He called it cutting the red tape for you, since I trust your judgment. He said it warmly, every time, like he was doing her a kindness nobody else in the office would think to do. She called it kindness. For 2 years, she called it kindness. There was one moment she'd return to it constantly, later turning it over like a stone. She was trying to find a new angle on where she'd almost caught it. A Tuesday, an account for a mid-sized logistics client, and she'd noticed a discrepancy in the routing details. Small, easy to miss, the kind of thing that made her pause with her pen an inch from the signature line. "This doesn't match the client file," she'd said, more to herself than to him. Robert had leaned over, unbothered, glanced at it for exactly as long as it took to seem thorough. "Client restructured their internal accounts last quarter. It's on file somewhere, I'll dig it up for you. Don't let it hold up the signature, they're waiting on this." She signed it. He never did dig up the file. She never asked again. The Meridian account was the one that changed everything, though she wouldn't understand that for another year. Robert brought it to her on a Friday afternoon. Already stamped, already routed halfway through approval, dropped on her desk with the same easy confidence he dropped everything. "Client's impatient. Just needs your sign-off by end of day. I've been through it twice. It's clean. I can review it properly Monday. They need it today, Elena. I wouldn't ask if I hadn't already checked it." He smiled, the same smile that had gotten her through 2 years of doubting herself less than she should have. "I trust you. That's the whole point of trust. You don't have to double-check everything twice." She signed it. She'd signed 100 like it by then. What she didn't know, what she wouldn't know until long after Robert had already resigned from the firm with a generous severance and an even more generous reputation intact, was that the Meridian account didn't exist. Not the way the paperwork described it. Funds routed through it over the following 18 months went somewhere else entirely through 3 shell accounts before landing in something with Robert's name nowhere near it and Elena's signature attached to every single transfer. Robert left Whitfield & Co. 11 months after the Meridian account was opened. There was a party. Someone gave a speech about his mentorship, his eye for talent, how many careers he'd quietly built. Elena cried a little, genuinely, when she hugged him goodbye. "You don't need me anymore," he told her. "You never really did." She found out what that sentence actually meant on a Tuesday morning, 8 months later, called into a conference room she'd never been called into before, 2 people from compliance and 1 from the firm's outside counsel sitting across from her with a folder 3 inches thick. "Do you recognize this signature?" It was hers, on documents she'd never fully read because Robert had told her every tier thus hark already them. Her say it was clean, she said, hearing her own voice from somewhere far away. "He told me he'd checked it twice." "Mr. Whitfield left the firm 11 months ago," the compliance officer said. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. "He's not the one whose name is on these transfers." Eleanor sat very still, running the last 2 years backward in her head, trying to find the version of events where this made sense. It kept arriving at the same place. Every account he'd ever handed her had come slightly pre-completed. Every trust he'd extended had a signature attached to it. Every compliment had landed exactly, precisely, right before a request. And somewhere in the middle of it, a break room, a colleague, a name she hadn't thought about in years. He said that to Marcus too, before Marcus left. She'd thought she was being mentored. She had been onboarded, slowly, deliberately, into a fraud that needed a name that wasn't his. This is one of the quieter, more effective forms of manipulation, precisely because it doesn't look like manipulation while it's happening. It looks like generosity. It's a grooming pattern that shows up far beyond personal relationships. Identify someone hungry to be seen as capable, give them real responsibility faster than their peers, attach warmth and approval to compliance, and let their own competence become the thing that implicates them. The victim isn't chosen because they're careless. They're chosen because they're careful, because a careful person's signature carries more weight and more silence than a careless honest ever would. Robert never once told Eleanor to break a rule. He simply made sure that by the time a rule needed breaking, she was the only one positioned to be blamed for it. And the discomfort she'd felt in these moments, the pause with the pen, the offhand comment in the break room, he'd built the relationship precisely so that discomfort would feel like disloyalty, something ungrateful, something she owed him too much to indulge. Elena spent the next 4 months doing something the compliance officers hadn't expected from her. Instead of hiring a defense attorney and going quiet, the way most people in her position did, she went back through every account Robert had ever handed her, year by year, building a timeline compliance's own investigators hadn't fully reconstructed. Every pre-filled form, every just needs your sign-off, every account that had crossed her desk with his handwriting already on it before hers ever touched it. She found Pretty's old comment first, buried in an email chain from 3 years back, and used it as a thread to pull. She tracked down Marcus 3 states away, working a different job entirely, reluctant to talk at first, until she said one sentence that made him go quiet on the other end of the line. "He told me I had an instinct for this. Did he say that to you too?" There was a long pause. "Word for word," Marcus said. It took her 4 months to find the pattern that took Robert 4 years to build. What she found wasn't just Meridian. There were 2 other accounts, both handled by analysts who'd left the firm before the fraud was discovered. Analysts who'd been mentored the exact same way, praised the exact same way, handed paperwork already halfway completed the exact same way, and who had each eventually quietly resigned or been let go once questions started circling too close, always just before anyone connected the accounts to a pattern instead of an individual. Robert hadn't built one fraud. He'd built a system for producing them, one trusting, talented junior employee at a time. She didn't go to the press. She didn't try to clear her name in public the way people around her expected her to, the way she might have wanted to on the nights she couldn't sleep. She compiled everything, years of it, cross-referenced, time-stamped, undeniable, including Marcus's account, and 2 others she found through old expense reports and calendar invites nobody had thought to check, and handed it to the firm's outside counsel and the federal investigators already circling Robert's newest employer, a firm 2 states away that had hired him 8 months earlier with glowing references from Whitfield and Cole. He was 3 weeks from being handed his next account there. A junior analyst, 26 years old, who'd been told in her first month that she had an instinct for this. The evidence Elena handed over reached that firm's compliance department 4 days before that account would have been assigned. She never met the analyst whose signature almost went on it instead of her own. She didn't need to. She'd already spent 2 years learning exactly what would have happened to her.